Would you ever use a Ouija board? You don't need to. You are already talking to a demon on a daily basis. Lucky me. Welcome to the Witching Hour Café, dear patron. Another night, another fright. A patron told us this story while inhaling 5 coffees. It was a profitable visitor. Let me share it with you. If you told me I'd be spending my Saturday in an abandoned house, watching my friends play with a Ouija board I took from my auntie's antique shop, I probably would have believed you, because that's the kind of stuff you think is cool to do on the weekend before your university classes start again. That last exhale of summer before the autumn was designed for mischief, and I had to take at least a small part in it. Before you proclaim me a villain, let me clarify 2 things. First, I did technically steal the Ouija board from my auntie, but I had every intention of returning it once my friends were done with it. It had originally been Max's idea. She loves antiques and tends to dress like one as well. She found the place and the time, but we were missing a Ouija board. Luckily for us, my auntie kept one on a display, but not for sale at her shop. Second, while I was complicit in providing a Ouija board, I had no intention of playing the game myself. I was no coward, but silly games meant to disrespect death and play with grief were not my cup of tea. Nobody else in our group felt the same. I chewed the inside of my cheek as I watched my friends set up the Ouija board on the dusty floor. Max and Sarah moved with enthusiasm, while Luke remained pensive but willing to participate. Their long shadows danced under the cheap candlelight, and from where I was sitting on the windowsill, they looked like puppets in an amateur shadow play. "You guys better not move the planchette," Max threatened by wiggling her accusatory pinky finger between us. "I will know," and I believed her. The 3 of them put 2 fingers each on the flimsy planchette. Sarah hid her eyes behind her messy bangs, but I could tell from the twitch in her lips that she was perhaps having second thoughts. She was always down for shenanigans, but her sense for danger and idiocy would start working as soon as it was already too late to pull out. She had no choice but to keep going now. Luke would do anything Max asked him to do, so I wasn't surprised that he followed her lead without complaint. "Is somebody here with us?" Max asked. The stubborn planchette stayed in place, while the 3 of them exchanged disappointed looks. She worded the question every which way, but the 3 of them kept the planchette steady. Boredom seeped between them, their interest slowly waning. I found myself slowly drifting away too. The gloomy, silent vibes of this abandoned house were making me yawn. That's when the planchette moved, followed by our collective gasp. As I leaned in close to see which of them manipulated the planchette, a piece of the fragile windowsill tore under me and I fell to the ground with an alarming thump. The candle flickered out and I could hear us scrambling to light it up again. I could tell from the way Sarah screamed that she had her hand over her mouth. "That's not funny," I recognized Sarah's voice. "Yeah, say that to my bum," I said, trying to calm her down with some light humor, but when the weak candlelight came back to life, she was teary-eyed. Max picked up the Ouija board and snapped her fingers. "Whatever, I'm bored. Let's just get drunk like normal people." And so we did. I lived with my aunt while I studied in her city, and since her antique shop was just below our apartment, putting the Ouija board back was a simple affair that I'd forgotten about as soon as the first Monday class rolled around. Luke and Max were whispering between themselves in the back row of the classroom, but I couldn't spot Sarah anywhere. My suspicions of her absence were confirmed when I hadn't heard the excited whoosh of her arm when she lifted it in the air to answer another question that nobody else wanted to. After class, I found Max dragging her feet to the campus cafeteria. The hallways were bustling with students moving up and down in a hurry, but Max was moving in slow motion. I put my hand on her shoulder and she turned around with a startled gasp, elbowing my chin in the process. "Oh, I'm sorry," she apologized, brushing her perfectly manicured hand over my chin. "You startled me." "Are you okay?" I asked her, but I'd already lost her attention. Her eyes were darting around in her sockets, as if they were looking for something that was behind me. Her lips turned upside down as a single light above us flickered. Max's eyes widened, and she ran off without answering me. I looked behind me and saw nothing but a long line of students waiting to enter the classroom we were just taking a lecture in. None of them paid any attention to us. Since Max was acting weird and I was by no means interested in chasing her around campus, I decided to drop by Sarah's place to bring her all the notes I took on various lectures today. She would always do that for us. recreating the lecture for us sometimes too, so I felt like I should take at least a little bit of friendly responsibility and return the favor. I had no intention of reenacting the lecture though. Sarah's rented studio was a brisk 10-minute walk from the campus. I suspected that her proximity to the university was one of the reasons she seems to beam with more energy than most of us who had to commute for over half an hour every day. 8 a.m. classes are usually 6 a.m. alarms for us, and that alone is an enthusiasm killer. I knocked on the doors of her apartment and waited, and waited, and waited. I knocked a couple more times when, in my impatience, I tried the doorknob, which opened with a touch of foreshadowing. I was not one to be dramatic, but in that moment I felt a shiver run up my spine. I pushed in, despite my reluctance. Sarah's studio was bathed in gentle shades of dusk. Last time I was here, we were studying for the final exam of that year, and despite the panic that always takes over her when it's exam week, her place was organized to a T. Nothing was out of place. But I couldn't say that now. Her study books were littered across the floor in a messy mosaic. The few pots and pans she had in her kitchenette were on the couch. Her laptop was open but upside down. Her carpet was cut in half, and the thrifted curtains she'd loved so much were also cut up. Did somebody break in? Sarah? I called to her, keeping my voice as firm as I could. The lack of an answer made me more uneasy than if a masked assailant came sprinting at me from the closet at the speed of the last thought I had before I entered Sarah's studio. Considering I was still alive, despite spending the last 2 minutes in there, I went to check the bathroom, only to find her toiletries swimming in a bathtub full of murky water. I picked up my phone and dialed the police. That's when I heard a restless shuffle from the other room. Then a chanting in a whisper. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I frantically searched for the source of that voice, and the blood in my veins froze when I spotted a pair of glowing eyes peering at me from underneath the bed covers. The terrified slope of the person's back gave the appearance of a corpse reanimating just to talk to me. A violent gust of wind pushed me aside, and I slammed my hip into the foldable kitchen table. That same wind lifted the covers off of the person hiding under them, Sarah, and slammed her into the floor. The sickening thud of a body hitting the hard floorboards made my own bones quake in fear. Sarah's face was pale, covered in damp strands of her hair. Her appearance was that of an exhausted student who hadn't eaten or slept since the exam period started, but I knew this couldn't be true. Sarah reached out to me, opening and closing her mouth as if she was trying to tell me something. I saw her fight to speak, but I realized she wasn't winning because there was an outline of fingers on her neck, long, skinny fingers. I ran to her, but was immediately pushed back, my face slammed into the ground. My nose spraying fresh blood everywhere, I dialed the police with shaky fingers, all while my friend was writhing on the floor. The police and ambulance were on the way. Sarah, it was Max, bursting through the door with Luke hot on her heels. She froze as soon as her eyes fell on Sarah. She had the same pale complexion that Luke and Sarah had. "What's happening?" I asked, searching my friends' faces for an answer, but they were too stunned to speak. Sarah let out a relieved gasp and then coughed her lungs out. I thought that was the end of it when I heard Max scream. Luke was holding her hand while she was getting dragged by seemingly nothing into the bathroom. He was fighting against a force I couldn't see. "Look what's happening!" There was sweat on his forehead as his careful look of calm was slowly cracking. "The Ouija board," he said, gritting his teeth. "We didn't say goodbye." There's a high chance I have already lost you at this point, but believe me that I remember the events of that evening as clear as day. Luke lost the invisible tug of war, and Max was dragged into the bathroom. He slammed his fists on the doors, but they didn't budge. The police arrived just at the right moment. I could no longer listen to the cacophony of coughing, screaming, and loud banging. All went silent as pressure left the room. It's like we could breathe again. Luke and I were shoved aside as Max and Sarah were taken away by the ambulance. Luke gave me a terrified look as if he was trying to say, "I am next." I felt that same fear, not for me, but for them, but also a violent pang of guilt. It was I who provided them with the tool of their own destruction. Perhaps I could also fix it. But first thing, I had to come clean to my aunt about stealing the Ouija board. When I told her, her eyes widened, and I could tell from the way she pursed her lips that I was about to get a vicious lesson. There's a reason that Ouija board is not for sale. she explained, and went to get it from the display. I thought it had some sentimental value to her, like an artifact from her childhood. She put it in my hands. Actions have consequences, my dear, and I'm too old to deal with this again. I didn't dwell on the again part. I just wanted her to tell me how to fix this. Make sure to say goodbye, my aunt said. With that, I rushed to the hospital. I found Luke sitting by Max's bed. She had a clean bandage on her head, but her breathing was steady. Luke, on the other hand, was staring at the wall opposite of her bed. He barely noticed that I came in until I slammed the Ouija board on the table. He gasped when he saw it. I told you not to play with it, Luke, I reminded him. My hands were clammy and shaky as I placed them on the planchette. I had no prerequisite knowledge of Ouija board etiquette, so I asked the first thing that came to mind. Are you here? I saw movement on the other side of the room, coming from the same place where Luke was staring at when I had first arrived. My neck stiffened and refused to move. Frozen in that very moment, I noticed the shadow approach me with predatory ease. My gaze dropped to my fingers on the planchette as I waited for it to move. I tensed when lanky, translucent fingers gently slid over mine. A gasp escaped me. I tried to remember how to speak. The ghostly fingers moved the planchette and I just let it happen. The planchette moved to say, yes. I asked you to leave. You're not welcome here, I demanded. My voice was that of a scared cub rather than a lioness. Luke wasn't trying to help. He was somehow more frozen than me, and I was the one practically holding hands with the other side. Though my head felt heavy like lead, I forced myself to look up and came face to face with a putrid smile and a set of dead, black eyes. Why did you welcome me then? It said. Goodbye. The planchette violently snapped to goodbye. I shot up as if stung by a bee and wiped my hands on my pants. The thing was no longer in the room with us. Who would have thought this whole ordeal could have been avoided with a bit of manners? If the Ouija board wasn't my aunt's, I would have burned it. Sarah recovered quickly after, and Max dropped her love of the macabre, much to Luke's relief. I no longer clean up other people's messes. Well, she was smart until she had no choice but to do something stupid. I'm glad it worked out. She's just like me, for real. Thank you for listening, dear patron. If you have a similar story, please leave it down below. I'd love to hear it. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe. We have a new story from the cafe every single week. See you there.